3.5 Validate Scope. Validate Scope is the process of formalising acceptance of the completed project deliverables. The key benefit of this process is that it brings objectivity to the acceptance process and increases the probability of final product, service or result acceptance by validating each deliverable. This process is performed periodically throughout the project as needed, as from the PMBOK Guide, page 156. In a nutshell, in this process, the customer or the sponsor is formally accepting or rejecting deliverables which have passed the control quality process. And that's an important point, that they must have passed the control quality process before they come to acceptance. When you see the word formal or formally anywhere, this usually means signed. It could be a formal written signature, an electronic signature, an email, or some other method that can be stored against the item to prove it has been accepted or authorised. And when you see the word baseline, this means a report or chart or similar which has been formally accepted. And because a baseline has been formally accepted or approved, then any required changes to a baseline must also be formally accepted or approved, and this means going through the change management process. A few projects will have just one or two deliverables, and so this process will happen just at the end of the project. But for most projects, deliverables will be produced and validated or rejected throughout the project. Stop everything you're doing and give me your full attention for a moment. At the start of this video, I gave you the PMBOK view of Validate Scope, and then I explained it too. But this simple area is one that most people get wrong in the examination. I've seen this process described wrongly in PMP training books, so please listen carefully. The choice of name, Validate Scope, seems crazy to me because the common meaning of validate is to check and prove the accuracy of something. But Validate Scope, despite the name, is not concerned with checking or proving that the deliverables accurately match your requirements. Validate Scope is concerned only with acceptance of deliverables. Checking that deliverables accurately match the requirements is performed in control quality. Please remember this for the exam. You would normally complete control quality before Validate Scope. You can do them in parallel, but be aware that this may increase risk. Everything that we do in project scope management is directed by the scope management plan, and everything that we produce must fulfill the requirements management plan. And so we would expect them to be inputs to this process. And guess what? We were right, they are. Input number one is the project management plan, and in particular the scope management plan and the requirements management plan. You will see a third component of the project management plan is required as well, the scope baseline. To refresh your memory, the scope baseline is the approved version of the scope statement, plus the work breakdown structure baseline, plus the work breakdown structure dictionary baseline. Why do we need it? Because the PMBOK Guide tells us that this is a basis for comparison to actual results. Input number two, project documents. From this group, we will be concerned mainly with lessons learned register to see what tips and tricks we have learned from performing this process on previous similar projects, and we can use this to improve this in later iterations. Quality reports. At the start of this video, I mentioned that Validate Scope is concerned with acceptance of the deliverables. The control quality is concerned with checking that they accurately match the requirements. The results of the quality control check will be in these reports, and so the customer or sponsor should review these before formally accepting or rejecting the deliverables. Requirements documentation. Requirements are compared to the actual results to determine if the change, corrective action or preventive action is necessary. Requirements traceability matrix, to find information about requirements and how they will be validated. The next one may seem a bit strange. Number three, validated deliverables. The reason that they are an input to this process, as I've said before, the process is intended to formally accept the deliverables, not to check their correctness, and so these verified deliverables have been checked in the control quality process. The final input is work performance data. This holds a record of the non-conformities connected with the deliverables, and this is used by the customer or the sponsor to decide if the deliverables can be accepted. Now the tools and techniques, these are quite simple. Number one, inspection. This is a manual check to compare the deliverable against the product acceptance criteria. This is necessary because control quality can check the accuracy of the deliverable against the scope, but it can't check if the deliverable will be acceptable to the customer. I'm sure many of you have had the experience of ordering an item based on its specifications, and when it arrives you realise it is not what you want. It is also possible that the deliverable did not successfully pass control quality, but when the customer or sponsor sees it, they decide it is good enough to accept. The second tool and technique is decision making, and the specific method is voting. This is required, of course, if there are more than one person involved in making the decision. That brings us to the outputs. Again, you should be able to guess that the primary output is accepted variables, and please note for the exam the difference between verified deliverables and accepted deliverables. If you don't know the difference, you'll need to watch this video again. In the exam you may be asked which process produces verified deliverables, and many people will choose validate scope by mistake. In earlier versions of the PMBOK guide, this process was called scope validation, which made it much easier to make this mistake. Output number 2 is work performance information, which includes details of accepted deliverables as well as rejected deliverables. Number 3 is change requests, which are related to deliverables that have not been accepted, and why, along with information about what needs to be done to make them acceptable. Number 4 are the project document updates. The lessons learned register, what worked, what didn't, what could be done better, what problems were encountered and how they could have been avoided. The requirements documentation, this is updated with the actual results of the validation process. It is recommended you also note deliverables that exceeded expectation and deliverables that did not live up to expectation but were accepted anyway. Requirements traceability matrix, we update this with the outcomes and also the methods used for the validate process. And that brings us to the end of validate scope. As we saw, it's quite a straightforward process as long as you're aware of the trap concerning verification. The next lesson is 5.6 control scope. Please remember to read the corresponding PMBOK guide before watching this video.